And in this video, I'm going to illustrate what I do when I have to change other people's models. Now, I'm going to use two models. One model will be, I want to try to really understand corporate PPA hedges in a wind farm. Another model will be a solar project, and I want to understand exactly how this minimum gain works because I'm having a little bit of struggles with that. So, my biggest theme in this stuff, and this one I've started to restructure already, my biggest theme is to not be afraid and to get this thing formatted so you can read it. What example could I have? If you're reading a book where it skips, where the book is not structured, chapter 1 doesn't begin with a history, and chapter 2 skips over to something else, and you can't figure out in this book what the diagrams mean or everything else. It's an unstructured mess. So just restructuring the model and cleaning it up. Now, I have gotten criticized for my formatting, and maybe it's all wrong, and the last thing I am is an artist. But I just want to, I'm desperate. I am desperate in putting the inputs together, in putting the financing together, in structuring the model so you can really see what's happening, because I've had the torturous job of working on other people. Now here are a few of the inputs, and we have some inputs, and they're all over here. I see this so much, especially for some reason in the US. And they're not ordered, so suddenly we go over here to some tax payments, we have some production, we have some costs over here. Let's arrange it so all the costs are in the same place. And then there's something called the custom data, and this has some more inputs. Why aren't these inputs together with the inputs for the production over here? Who knows? Okay, so that's the first thing we're going to do. And then there are some other inputs. If we go to this partnership, for example, there are all these colors. And there might be beautiful colors. I don't know about the art. And perhaps, you know, there's one color for the tax equity and one color for the other stuff. And you go up here, and then there's some more inputs over here. And why aren't these inputs in the input page? So that's the very first thing I'm going to do. Now, I'm going to close this file, okay, because it's kind of big. And then the other thing I'm going to do is fix some comments. If you have some comments like that, maybe it's okay, but why don't you just go, and I have to do this, I'm sorry, it's kind of out of order. I'm being a little hypocritical because I'm trying to make a structured model, and some of my work on this is really unstructured. And let's make this a color so we can see it. Okay. And let's make one of these little show comments things. Okay. And why don't we somewhere in maybe I'm doing this highly unstructured, so it's kind of bad. I'm going to put a true here. Oops, no, I'm not. That looks like shit. I'll go to the input, and somewhere on the very bottom, why don't, you can see I've started to arrange these things, and now, oh my God, we've got 800 lines of inputs, which is too much, but that's how many inputs they have. At least let's understand them and get them in the same place and understand the priority. And how about I'll just put comment, and I'll just make that a range name, and then on here, all you have to do is, if this spinner box, and I went past this, if this comment is true, so let's go here and assign a macro. Oh no, let's assign, come on, let's assign a macro to this, make a new one, and we put up here, if range comment, then application dot display app 1, 2 P's, not 3. Dot display comment indicator, and then it'll tell you what to do. Let's play comment indicator only, so we can kind of see where the comments are. Okay, and before we do that, why don't we put application dot display. Okay. Display comment indicator equal, and we'll put no indicator. Okay, so when we press this button, it'll change the true and false, and the other thing we have to do then is right click on this and put format control, and for the control just type the range name. Okay, and then this is a little bit slow because it's, excuse me for being slow, but that's that. Okay, do those little things, and then we're going to make a whole bunch of graphs and move things around. But let's illustrate what you can do. So the other thing I do is I absolutely make sure at the top of each page I make a little project name and keep the IRR in sight. And I should resave and version up. I think that's a new verb, version up. So I should resave with F12, and I can make this R1. And maybe by the time I'm finished, I'll have R20. But let's make sure that if we lose the IRR and we've saved it a whole bunch, we can go back. So I don't want to change any of the calculations. All I want to understand is, number one, minimum gain, and number two, corporate PPAs and hedges and these sorts of things. Okay, and let's start cleaning this horrible crap up. Now, we've got to do a whole lot. Now, if you have a kind of any kind of lines around that, I press Shift Control F. That takes away all of. I've done it, but you can't see it, so that was kind of stupid. And then I make a couple of little bit of blank things like you should always do, maybe, and I'm gonna put the key titles in column B. Okay, and let's just start cleaning it up once we've got all this stuff moved over. And perhaps let's make the title, maybe we're going to add a couple of other things, because maybe we want to show the P50 case or the P90 case. Control Alt C, and I'm no sum column this time. I suppose if we have ones and zeros, we can put those in, although they put yes or no over the ones and zeros. And then for the top color, I think we only have two things. Okay, and that really, for me, this I'm not trying to sell this generic macros thing, but I really did make this so that you can do exactly this sort of thing. Okay, and it's got techniques to get all the things. So now we can start to see what's going on, hopefully, and we can get our inputs arranged. And why you wouldn't do this? Maybe I'm really missing something. Maybe some kind of CFO wants always to see things on one page and all that stuff to the inputs, but you can't get all the inputs on one page, and you can't see where it's going to come from. Okay, so that's just a little bit of an introduction. Remember, I'm going to now stop the video and start changing other things, and I'm going to keep going back and forth, stopping the video and showing you little things to make it work. These different types of revenue contracts. There could be a hedge, there could be pure merchant, there could be something called a revenue swap where you get a fixed amount of revenues, except you have to take some risks of the plant availability and all that. So so we look around and we found this pro forma. And really, I don't know why they called it pro forma. This is really periodic revenues and expenses. I hope you can change these names. And again, that's why I suggest you leave it, the formulas on automatic. That's going to slow you down perhaps a little bit. But if you don't leave it on automatic, you can't see if you've changed anything important and kind of go backwards. So I'm going to go back and format in just a minute, but we've got some way too many escalation rates. Absurd amount. These are as if you really can predict real changes, but whatever, I should stop bitching about that. Okay, and then there are a whole lot of different kinds of revenues and rather generation and revenues. Okay, and then when you go down to the revenue section, and then they've got a section for a few different PPAs. Okay, and they've got even something called a basis to the settlement, but we really don't have anything in there. And then the interesting part is this, for me, this financial swap revenue, and they have a price at the node. That's not the hub. The hub is in the middle. That's the big place where everybody's traded. The node is where you're located. And I put some little things in, and then we have a swap price. This is at the hub. This is what you fix with Google or somebody in a contract, and then there's a settlement and a floating settlement, and then you have some net swap revenue, and maybe we should put net financial swap. And then you have a proxy revenue swap. So what I'm going to do is I want to really be able to find these ones. So I'm moving these over into column B. That seems to be a kind of an obvious thing to do. And then we'll look at just at least to kind of understand what's happening. I'm pressing shift, whoops, oh, not that, shift control G. And we can do a couple of things like this. I have shift control D for, I can't do that because I keep on doing that. Shift control C, I guess. Okay, enough. I'm going to stop that. All right, and then we have this, and maybe we want to show what the REC revenues are. That's the renewable energy credit revenues. So I suppose we could insert a line. Let's make sure nothing bad happens, and then let's do a little analysis of what's going on. Now, you might be strongly disagreeing with what I'm doing. I can't touch this model. If I go back and go to the client and ask them questions, then I'm not going to be able to show them where their model is. They're going to be all confused by the new model. That's a legitimate argument. But I really want to try to understand what's going on. So the first thing, let's color this one sheet, and we'll see where some of the numbers come from. We'll even put a sum column in case they have that. And then now we can kind of really start working on this. Now, by putting it in column B, that means we'll be able to, if we put it in column B, we'll be able to make a table of contents, find the stuff, and everything else. Okay? Hopefully you agree, maybe not. Now okay, we start at the top. We just leave the dates at the top. I don't know why they had all these other dates. I tried to delete one of those lines, and it didn't work. And so we can now look at the different kind of revenues. Okay, and let's look at the financial swap revenue. And we can see some of these came from a different page. I guess I have something that came from the input page. We could color those. and we have the price at the node. Okay, and then we multiply this price at the node by I-159. Now, what I would love to do is see where that comes from. Now, I can't. So let's insert a few lines, and I would do this. I am doing it. That's kind of a silly thing to do. And I'm not trying to change anything, any calculation they have. All I want to do is put a couple of lines, Shift Control plus a couple of times, and put the revenues in there. Now I just did something totally stupid. Okay, I'm going to redo this because if I want to, no, I was going to move these lines. I was going to press after I press Shift Control plus after I press the move, but let's not do that. So let's find what's in I-159. And now we can hopefully, I know this is kind of our transparency issue. And we have actual generation. So I'm just going to, and they say financial swap, actual generation, but I'm just going to put actual generation. This, of course, unless there's some kind of bad practice of putting some sum here, it's not there. But then when we compute this number down here, so this was 159, but down here it's 160. So let's look at what's in 160, and then we can evaluate what's going on. And this is the contracted generation. And then perhaps we can take the difference and the difference is what's sold on a merchant basis. Now, of course, they should have put a column that says if it's megawatt hours or kilowatt hours or USD or euros and all that, but let's do that. Now, isn't it true? Maybe you disagree, but if I put them right here, I can start to really see what's going on. Okay, so we have a difference. I'm pressing Shift Control C, of course. And so when we multiply this price at project mode, let's put revenue at project mode. This is not the hub highs. This has basic risk applied to contract generation. Okay, so you've signed a contract, and then you have your swap price, and that's fixed with Google or somebody, and then you multiply this by not the, and I was wrong. This is multiplied by the actual generation. I made that mistake on purpose, of course. And then this fixed applied to contract generation. Okay, so you can see when you set up your model, if you're going to have a hedge like this, you've got to decide how much is contract. The actual generation will be driven by the P50, P90, and all of that. And then we have the settlement at the hub, which comes from whatever, and this is applied to the contract generation. Okay, so we get the swap price, and we have the settlement price, and we subtract. We have a loss. Now, just 1 second. Okay, so this is again, it's a very scattered and how do you say this when it stops and starts? A very, uh, 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 maybe a difficult video to watch. But I've added some more items to our uh, revenue from, I called it now, I changed it, revenue from our virtual PPA. We need some contracted generation and actual generation. Now, what I did is I added a little percent factor. And my suggestion is to not be afraid of adding these things. As long as you can get back to your IRR here, uh, you can add these things. So I want to say, okay, what happens in this case? What happens if our, and I put it in the wrong place, what happens if our actual generation is really low? Okay, and all I do is go find where the actual generation comes from. Don't be afraid to find that. Control right thing. And up here, I just put a little thing, just put a little 100%. And this 100% is just a standard old sensitivity factor with, of course, when you need it, you have to put a whole number and then divide it by this, and we'll put a reset. Up here, we'll put a reset on our sensitivity factors. Okay. And perhaps you're really objecting. Oh, you're messing around with those beautiful model. You're not allowed to change anything in this model. Ah, that's a crime. Okay, and we'll put a reset. Now, but before I do that, I want to reset something else because I've started to reorganize the inputs. Okay, and we have our capacity. We have first our capacity and our energy. What's our nameplate? And this must have come from, oh, right now it comes from the same sheet, so that's okay. By the way, if you don't like this thing where you sometimes get these in the same sheet, you press Control Alt C, and this thing that says remove links from the same sheet can take it away. I'm not going to do that because it needs to go through every single little item in the sheet, and sometimes it takes a little while, especially this is a little bit of a slow model. Okay, and then we put our capacity and generation in, and oh, this has got our P factor in effect, which I didn't really trust because they have a couple of other things. That's why I did a sensitivity factor, and there were a couple of things about the okay, the we have the standard deviation of generation, which is wonderful. But let's move that, of course, to the here. Okay, how about this? Shift Control Plus. Like I said, that's uh, uh, here. Okay, and another addition. Okay, I don't know if you're getting irritated with me. Very likely if you're watching this. And then we have the prices at the hub. And there's some real or nominal, and then I moved this price curve. Now I'm so much hating this kind of thing where you cannot use lookup for the entire line or column or row because you set it up like this. But since it's their model, I'm going to leave it. Okay, but so now what we can do is copy this and put it over kind of on the side, all right? And then that's going to keep our base case. And now let's put a merchant sensitivity factor. I would really like to see what can happen to the merchant price. And this would be horrible, contradicting to everything I said. So we'll put a merchant sensitivity. I hate. I'm trying to type fast, but I'm not as fast as you. And let's see if we can be lazy and copy this so we get it the same size, and we'll get the same kind of 0 to 100. And now that goes on to line 87. Okay, and then on line 87, now it's 65. We can change that, of course, and we can just do the standard thing, divide that by 100, Shift Control P, and then this thing that we copied now is simply the one we copied times our sensitivity factor. Okay? Oops. And we've got our sensitivity on the merchant price. All right, Control D. All right, and then now we can really try to illustrate both what happens when the merchant price changes and what happens when the actual generation changes, to try to get a little bit of a sense of what's going on this one. But if we want to do the reset, perhaps we should make this merchant sensitivity. Hopefully that's not a thing, and we'll put generation sensitivity. And of course, I was totally horrible by putting generation sen instead of this one, but we put range generation sen because I forgot the S equal 100, and we put range merchant sensitivity equals 100, and then we can copy this to any place we'd like. And hopefully when I press this button, it's taking a tiny bit too long. I don't know why. This mall isn't really all that big, and we have it back to our 100%. And then what I have done now is, if you want to get a little fancy, whoops, I don't want to do that. I want to copy this to this page, and I'm trying to illustrate, and let's put project name here, and just give it a minute, and then we'll show our what our hub price is. Okay, I'm just taking the first quarter, I believe, and I gotta find where we did this. So now, hopefully, you can kind of understand just a little bit what's happening with these things. And we put the I split the price at the hub, okay, and then the basis differential, and we put this, and we press Shift Control. We'll see how's that. Okay, so our net price that we receive is the difference. We have a basis differential because we probably have a whole bunch of solar power that's clogging up the transmission system, and that's an uncertain one, and we could put that in as well. Okay, and that's what our net price is. Now what I'm going to do is pretend this is Google, and Google pays 39 for this much power, so we could figure out how much you get in revenues. Okay, so we'll make a little diagram that multiplies that. Now they are contracted. God, I do that so much. Okay, they get this much money. We'll put this much money, and we'll make it kind of as a whatever. You really have to waste? How stupid to waste? Okay, good. Whatever. This is good. Okay, and it didn't help. I wanted to put a big arrow for how much money they get. And then they also have a swap. They have a contract, and they have a swap based on the actual generation, but if their actual generation is way down, then the amount they receive here from this node, this is the revenue they receive at the node, that goes down, but the amount they pay, they still have to pay the contracted generation, so that doesn't go down, so they've got an exposure to the merchant price. And all we can do then is put our little input for the merchant sensitivity here and start demonstrating. And I don't know, I'm really struggling with this diagram, and I'm going to have to turn the video off once again to finish this. But I would like to demonstrate how these, and use this model, use somebody else's kind of model, a nice model, to demonstrate what happens uh, uh, what contract for differences are signed, and get some words out on how to then change this. So now, hopefully, I can put this down, and then we can see what's happening to the IRR if we get lower generation and lower or higher actual generation. We look at the IRR and hopefully understand how this works with a model. And of course, after that, we can just hit the reset button and we get back to our original, I was just afraid of that, our original IRR, and we haven't changed anything. So again, that's the kind of thing, if you want to review a model and get a little deeper into it, it's not taking that long, but that's just a suggestion. So now we're in the presentation part of the thing. I made a little graph showing the revenue and that they get during the contract period and the revenue they get during the merchant period. I'm not going to go off on these merchant price forecasts other than to say, if you can build a solar plant against this kind of revenue, there's no economic sense to the merchant revenue being so high, because everybody would earn an enormous rate of return on the solar project, and they would overbuild solar projects, maybe they are now, and it would tend to depress the merchant prices. It's not internally consistent, but now we can kind of see what's really going on. So if I underproduce, so if I don't get enough money from my merchant, now this is going extremely slowly, and maybe that's too dramatic and all that, but you can see that the revenues go down now and my IRR goes down. It doesn't go down that much because this merchant assumption at the end. Now, if I would assume a higher merchant price, not a lower one, a higher, it goes down even more, because you got to go and get that merchant price. If you assume a lower merchant price, then it's kind of offset, because if you have that generation, at least you can buy it at a much lower price. Okay, and I think that's about it for our revenue contracts. Hi, Chris. I'm saying hi to my neighbor. Sorry. Just a minute.